Buddhism is saying, from Buddhist views, anybody who's also practiced Buddhist methodology has come to the same conclusion, the same observation, just like people who practice what Einstein says, that there are trillions of minds, consciousnesses, rivers of mental moments, sentient beings, mind possessors. And then the logic and analysis of cause and effect would come to a conclusion that there cannot be such a thing as a creator. It's not viable. There cannot be such a thing as coming from nothing. There cannot be such a thing as it's being physical. The analysis is all there. They're the findings, but we have to do the analysis ourselves, you know? The logic, it's logical analysis. So from Buddha's perspective, then consciousness is necessarily, and in fact, the universe, matter, universes. The universe consists of minds and matter. That's it. And this is the Vajrayana model, which I find very tasty, okay? That minds, that matter is the four elements. We still think that way. We used to think that way in the Middle Ages, and we still think we now have 57 other elements, but now there's still this view is the one that's used, that's implied, applied, certainly in the Vajrayana model. There are trillions of mind streams, mental continuums, beginningless continuities of mental moments, beginningless continuities of mental, and by definition, beginningless for both matter and minds. Why? Because if you say that everything is the product of the process of cause and effect, that what exists this minute comes from something before, then by definition, you can't have a first cause. Now, for the Christians, with respect, they have a big fat philosophy, and as capital F, capital C, they try to show how there can be a first cause. And that, of course, is called God, not for the Buddha. It's not viable. So beginningless and endless, matter and minds. And it happens to be in the Vajrayana, all minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the four elements. It's just the way it is. And this is how we create karma. So we've got gross consciousness, which is sensory, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, tongue consciousness, which is that part of our mind, which is necessarily not physical, that works with the grosser level, like the eyeball and the nerves, the grosser level of physicality, gross body, and they work inextricably together. Then you've got subtle consciousness, which is your mental states. Your thoughts and feelings and emotions, they're by definition more subtle, and they are also inextricably linked to a subtler level of physicality. And this is a model used in the Tibetan medical system, similar to the Ayurvedic, similar to the Chinese one, the Indian one, you know. So we've got the 72,000 subtle channels, subtle nervous system, which is subtle physical. Coursing through all those channels is subtle wind energies. And then linked to all those different wind energies are our different states of mind. So that's why when your Tibetan doctor feels your pulses, she'll feel like an imbalance of certain winds, which he knows about. And she will know that's related to your attachment energy, your mind. And that's why you're having panic attack. Or that's why you're having anger. So it impacts upon those winds. And this is even how we create karma. As karma says, the law of karma says every millisecond of what goes on in our mind programs the mind. I mean, Buddha would have liked that term. It's not possible that anything we do with our mind doesn't produce its results in the mind. It's natural. So whatever you do in your mind, that impacts upon the mind itself, develops that habit, let's say a moment of love. That also impacts upon the wind energies, and that purifies the wind energies because it's virtuous. It's appropriate and reasonable state of mind. It's not a moralistic issue. If it's anger, as Amazopa says, then that anger programs the mind to be more angry, and it also impacts upon the wind energy, which pollutes the wind energy, which eventually, you know, later manifests at the grosser level called sickness. And then eventually impacts upon the external elements, and this produces then results in the type of rebirth you have. So there are four ways that everything we think and do and say ripen, using the analogy of seeds and fruits. Oh, by the way, you've got very subtle consciousness, which is the subtlest level of your mind, the very subtlest level, inextricably linked to this very subtle level of the wind energy, the four elements. And this is just the way it is, they say, you know. So anyway, every millisecond what we think and do and say programs our mind and impacts upon the winds, which in turn becomes manifests at the grosser level as health or ill health. It manifests at the grosser level as a certain type of environment. So there are four ways that what we think and do and say ripen. One is a type of rebirth. So in our case, virtuous karma of non-killing, specific intentional non-killing, especially practiced, as Rinpoche says, in the context of keeping vows of non-killing, which are very powerful. We got one of those. But there are 3 other ways karma ripens throughout our lives, and all beings are like this, rats and dogs as well. You have your tendencies. The second way that karma ripens is as a tendency. So clearly we have a mixture of negative and positive tendencies, don't we? Depending on whether you're a psychopath or a saint, you know, in between these two. Some non-virtues, some virtues. We're all different, but basically the same model. So this first way our karma ripens is a type of rebirth. Second way our karma ripens, and that's the one at the time of death, you know, of your dog or your mummy. Before you stop breathing, a certain karmic seed in your bank vault of billions of karmic seeds, which is triggered at that moment, is dependent. Which one is triggered is dependent upon whether you're peaceful or not. And as Amazoba says in his book, How to Face Death Without Fear, if you want to help anybody in their life when they need you most, is at the time of death, to help them go through this process with a peaceful mind. Why is that helpful? Because that then enables a virtuous karmic seed to be triggered, which will bring them a happy, at least another decent human life. It's very practical. So then the first way our karma ripens is a type of rebirth. The second way is a tendency. So we basically come into our world programmed, don't we, with our bunch of mental tendencies, whether they've been good at football or good at music or good at killing or good at being kind. They're all out, and they don't come from a creator. They don't come from nowhere, and they do not come from the parents. This is so fundamental in Buddhist practice, in Buddhist understanding. It takes a while because we don't think that way at all. You know, they're mine. The second way in this life my karma ripens is called experiences similar to the cause, which is, we can see we're very social beings, right? We're very social beings. We're born into another body, if that's not social. And then we have mummies and daddies and grandpas and grandfathers and neighbors and rats and cockroaches. We have this very intense relationship from the time we're born till the time we die with other beings. And basically, if you analyze it, we can put them into 2 groups: those who are nice to us and those who are mean to us. The third lot, called strangers, we don't have any contact, so leave them alone. So either we have people who are nice to us, who treat us kindly, who see us as nice, who believe our words, who give us things, you know, we want an attachment only wants those. Then we have the other people, and they can go from role to role, who are mean to us, who lie to us, don't believe our words, steal from us, don't give us credit at the bank. So the first lot is the fruit of our virtuous actions. The second lot is the fruit of our non-virtuous actions. So every millisecond of what happens out there, including the third way our karma ripens in this life, is as literally environmental. So even the way the 4 elements impact upon us is the fruit of our actions. In other words, the first cause of everything any sentient being ever experiences or does or says or thinks, first cause, your past actions, your past programming. And the secondary cause is the external. And this takes time, because as far as the ego's view and the materialist view and the instinctive view of ego is that I'm this innocent victim who got plonked on this planet by either a creator or mummy or daddy. They're the 2 options. Neither of them consulted me. I have no role in my life. I'm somehow this person people made and plonked on this planet, to whom bad and good things happen randomly. I mean, that is the view we have, and no wonder we are all mad. No wonder we all suffer having that view as our default belief. Buddha says it's demented. So even already the view of karma completely changes our lives if we use it properly. But if we just hear it with respect to the darling lady just there, I can't think of your name. What's your name, sweetheart? Diana. You know, it's like superstition and fear and guilt and shame and I'm blame, go to hell for 42 eons. I mean, we can be forgiven of hearing that. It's like Lama Zopa talks like a 14th century yogi. We know that. So it sounds like all those texts. He just quotes from them. But we've got to be intelligent about it. I mean, it's sort of like, it's the law of botany. It's not punishment and reward, you know, it's your garden. The bank account is your bank account. Well, this life is your garden. Thinking of it this way, that everything that's there, as Lama Zopa says, my karmic appearance. Then we start to own it. We start to take responsibility for those weeds instead of feeling like a victim and bursting into tears and blaming somebody and suing someone for putting weeds in my garden. I mean, you know, creative view is like a conspiracy theory, honestly. It really is. No wonder we're ridiculous. So karma, we really think it through and bring it down to earth, is such an amazing view, and it helps already transform our lives. Forget about compassion yet. You know, you take responsibility, you own your own mind, you own your experiences, you own your body, you own your ill health and your good health, you own the good things and the bad, not just, oh, I'm a bad person, bad, naughty things happen. It's just so infantile. Got to think it through. It's huge view, you know. And also, of course, it's the basis of compassion for others. I always like to tell that story of these young Tibetan nuns. I tell this story repeatedly because it's such a powerful example of the consequences practically of the view of karma. In 2003, you know, Richard Gere invited some former prisoners. Dalai Lama was coming and he invited 20 former prisoners, and I was working with the prison project at the time, and he invited people like me who work with people in prison. And I tell the story repeatedly. It's such a powerful example. So he also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns. And he, where's my tissue? Just an old tissue, thank you. He, and it was a very moving day. These young, all these different prisoners, black ones, white ones, male ones, female ones, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, whole cross-section of American people, right? All of whom had been in prison, you know, at some reason or other. Excuse me, I have to have a blow. And then also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns who'd been in prison at some point, right? And they gave their talk. And I'll unpack it and I'll explain. It's very powerful, you know. So it really, first of all, you could argue that they're suffering probably more than they were sexually abused and tortured in prison, right? And you could argue that probably if you wanted to quantify suffering, theirs was the worst. You'd think like that. But the thing that I think was very evident, first of all, to all the American human beings in there, mostly might call themselves Buddhists, but like most Buddhists, we don't think of karma. Oh, yeah, it's karma. I believe in karma. That's about it. Oh, how does it work? I don't know. It's like saying, oh, I believe in botany. How does it work? I don't know. What good is that? It's absurd to say you believe in it. I'm not being rude, Diane. Although she's a good Buddhist who reads the sutras and everything. Understand. Anyway, you understand. So there's women. It was interesting. First of all, the key point, and this is now I want to get into attachment and aversion. It's just so tasty, you know. These 2 young women were telling about their suffering, but it was clear to everybody they weren't angry. So we've got to look at that, because in our culture, we assume if you're not angry, you're suppressing and you've got a problem. We really do. It's just assumed in our minds, assumed. And because why? The Buddhist analysis, because we've all got ego grasping, which is the main delusion that clings to an inherent me, which then the main voice of which is attachment to get what the me wants, and the result of which is aversion, which is a panic attack when it doesn't get what it wants. There's a hierarchical relationship between those 3 poisons, you know, this cute phrase Buddha uses. You know, it's profound. Of these 3, just the 2, attachment and aversion, but then understanding the ignorance beneath them, and you really got a view of the Buddhist view of the mind. You know, it's incredible. So anyway, these young women clearly were not angry. So of course we might think, oh, well, they're suppressing, they're being all holy, you know. But let's look at why they wouldn't have anger. What does anger mean? Give it, conceptualize it. This is our trouble. We feel it's an emotion. We think attachment's an emotion. We feel it in our body. Jealousy is an emotion. We feel it in our body, we say. It's only because we notice it when it hits the body, because we don't pay attention to the mind, the thoughts beneath it. And that's the skill the Buddha gives us, you know, the brilliant skill. Like I said, forget nirvana, emptiness, and the rest. Just this alone, giving us a skill that enables us to hear these crazy conceptual stories in there, you know, that inform our emotions. So what is anger? Well, anger is a volatile expression of the bare bones state of mind, the 3rd of the 3 poisons, called aversion. That's the response when attachment, the second one, doesn't get what it wants. And attachment is the main voice of the root one, which is this assumption of an intrinsic me. So assumed it's even puzzling to hear it, you know. So we'll leave that one there. There it is. The main one is attachment to get what that I wants. It's the energy that runs our universe. It's their default every millisecond. And as I'm saying here, even running our good actions. It's underneath our compassion. It's underneath our love. Because it's not because we're horrible. It's because it's how samsara is. But we don't notice it. We don't even articulate it in our culture, you know. So this anger that these nuns didn't have, why? Well, what does anger say? It says, how dare that happen to me or to other people? I don't deserve it. You listen to when bad things happen. It's the first primordial response. Automatically, I don't, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. The I don't deserve is the key thing to look at. It's so profound. Well, what that assumes I don't deserve, it assumes I didn't do something to cause it, isn't it? It assumes that. Now, if you believe in a creator, which means you began in your mother's womb, or if you believe your mother and father made you, which means you began in your mother's womb, then you are correct. You don't deserve it. You are absolutely right. And you are right to be angry. And you are right to be outraged. How dare these two human beings have sex and decide to make me and then get me out and put me there and give me psychosis and give me love and give me depression. Who the hell do they think they are? I know I sound hilarious, but this is a logical deduction and we all believe it's the truth. We never question. Oh, of course my mother made me. Of course I get anger from her. We don't believe, we don't analyze it. Excuse me, with respect. Of course you'd be angry with your mother, and you should be angry with her. How dare she make a bad person? How dare she? I really mean this. We just assume it's true. So of course we get angry with that. And always our mother. Fathers never get the blame. I don't know why. It's mums who get the blame. Even if the daddy's wrong, you blame your mother. She should have married him, you know. It's her fault. So I mean, of course, so these young women don't have that concept in their mind. You have to understand me. Why not? Because for 700 years in their culture, coming from Indian culture, it's in the bones of their being, the view of karma. That they are the product of their own past, not the product of a creator, and not the product of their mother and father. It's just their view. It's in their bones from the time they're born. They bring it up. It's just integrated into their being. So when you know you're the product, like your garden is a product of your hard work, you don't have a mental breakdown when you see a weed. You don't blame somebody who did it. I'm going to sue somebody who put a weed in my garden. Well, you don't say who didn't put flowers in my garden. I deserve flowers, which is how we live our lives. We see the outside world as some kind of thing that someone gives to us, good or bad. We grasp at the good. I deserve it. Give it to me. We don't care if we don't create the cause, because we deserve it. We don't know why we deserve it. We just feel we do. And we don't deserve the bad. Why not? It's so bizarre. It's just too bizarre to think this. It's so schizophrenic for the Buddha's view, you know? Because if you have the view that your mind goes back and back, if you have the view that every single thing you think and do and say programs your mind, then you come into this life fully programmed with your own tendencies. And then next, with the people you've got the karma to meet and how they love you or hate you. They're your karmic appearance. You created them. And even the physical environment, you know? Everything is your karmic appearance. Having that view, which these nuns had, okay, it's hard work when you're being tortured and sexually abused in prison for being a good girl, but they don't have anger, and so it's practice for them. They have an explanation of why it is happening. That otherwise, I mean, if you've even got faith in God, it's better than the materialist view, quite frankly. At least you've got someone who knows what they're doing. They've got a plan. They keep their plan in their pocket. That's okay. I have faith in you. I'm not being sarcastic. You'll live a good life if you have faith in God, because you know he's got a plan. You'll be relaxed. But the materialist view, I'm sorry to be rude, there is no logic to not have complete crazy mental breakdown every day. Are we communicating here? Philosophically speaking, come on, you know, people. No wonder we're all crazy. So these young women don't have anger, not because they're suddenly magical, because they don't have those conceptual thoughts of innocent victim, not fair, who did, how dare, blah. That's all made up, Buddha says, by not, or believing I'm an innocent victim, believing I didn't ask to get born, believing somebody else maybe, believing I've got a soul of some creator, believing I'm some kind of physical, and that's it. Of course you have anger. It's hard work. I spend most of my life getting rid of it. Although I sound angry all the time. My sister heard me talking on the phone. She said, Robina, you sound so angry. I said, I'm not angry. She talks just like I do, because she's enthusiastic as well, but she doesn't notice, you know. So these young women, and that means they're still human, unless they're highly evolved bodhisattvas. But they were able to work on it. So they didn't have anger. That's what anger means. Anger is, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. That's a pretty intense philosophical view to have you in your bones of your being. No wonder we suffer. But if you have the view, even intellectually, without even clairvoyance, it can also already profoundly change your mind because you're applying that view. You own it. You don't have a panic attack every time you meet something that's not nice. You own it. You greet it. You hold your sleeve, pull your sleeves up and say, come on, bring it on, babe. I can handle it. You know. Did I mention today? I forget where I mentioned Sunny, the prisoner. Did I mention her today? No, I didn't, did I? See, she's even a more no, I won't go there. It doesn't matter. These young women. So the thing is, what's interesting, this is the point now. Getting to the point. And in one of them, there was tears at the end. Quiet. They were quiet. There were tears. And she said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers because we know we must have harmed them in the past. Because the logic of karma is, whoever you meet, you can't have met them if you hadn't met them before and created the karma, you know, created the history with each other. You can't go to that mother's womb unless you've got some intense history with her. You can't. And all this is, you see, we want someone running the show. We like conspiracy theories. We're convinced there's somebody behind everything. So I can't stand those Peter Jackson movies. I love the man. He's a great movie maker, but I loathe all those movies, an alternative to God. You know, someone's always behind. There's a good person and a bad person. It's all conspiracy theories. Someone's running everything. That's what a conspiracy theory is. That's superstitious view of ego grasping. Are we communicating? With respect, if you've got faith in a creator, I'm sorry, it's a conspiracy theory. It's either there, it's either God or the devil, isn't it? That's it. Someone's always running it behind, secretly pulling the strings. It's complete superstition for the Buddha. You're sort of like thinking that some person who jumps in and does your garden overnight and hides away. Who put those weeds in my garden? Some person running the show. It's a natural law. Well, karma's a natural law. It's kind of an intense concept. Not punishment, not reward, because there's no punisher and no rewarder. So when you have that view, which takes time, then you own your weeds and your flowers, and you know you're in charge. Whew. So karma ripens is 1, type of rebirth. 2, your mental tendencies in that rebirth. 3, your experiences at the hands of others in that rebirth. And even 4, the way the physical world impacts upon you. So bare bones, forget emptiness, nirvana, compassion, and the rest. If you just want another happy life, what's the cause? Buddha starts giving us the instruction. Well, you want to have a nice, healthy body next life? Don't kill, babe. You'll get a nice human mum. And 2, if you don't kill and live in vows of not killing, you won't have a tendency to kill. 3, you won't get killed or die young. And 4, you'll have a fat, healthy body, and whatever food you have and the air, and it'll nourish you. Even if it's rubbish, you'll be nourished. So you'll have a happy life. You'll have a nice body, nice tendencies, nice people, and nice environment. Do you want that? Well, don't kill, babe. That's it. That's it. That's the cause. And you want to be rich, then don't steal. You want to be even more rich, be generous as well. You want people to believe your words? Don't lie. You want people, you keep breaking your relationship and running away on you? Don't sexually misconduct. Don't jump on other people's partners. Each action brings its own result. And where does this come from? Not speculation, but from observation. From Buddha's analysis. And anybody else who's followed Buddha's methodology. It's all there. If you can prove him wrong, go for it. We produce ourselves. When I first heard karma, I didn't say it like this because I've taken 45 years to say it this way, my own kind of casual way, to myself, casually, down to earth. It was the revelation for me. The piece that was missing in my life, I tell you, that I'm in charge. And that's what karma means, that we are in charge. I like that. Wow. Grow up. It's like if you learn botany, then you've got to learn to know learn the rules, so you know what to get, so you be in charge of it. Not just, oh, it's botany. You learn it so you can get you what you want. You know? You grow up. It's grown up. Karma's very grown up. But attachment and aversion, when you get to the mind in the second part of the Lam Rim, that's where you really can see how the relationship, you know. Attachment is the main voice of ego grasping, and attachment is this bottomless pit, first, of dissatisfaction. I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I am not enough. So naturally you have emotional hunger, the next level of attachment, which craves something delicious out there. We're convinced that such, if I ingest it, it'll fill me up and make me kind of unsatisfied, you know, be satisfied. So it's a bottomless pit. It can't be satisfied. So it's emotional hunger, dissatisfaction, emotional hunger, manipulation, controlling, you know, and then possession. All of this is attachment. And then its key job is to exaggerate the deliciousness of the object that we're convinced will give me happiness when I get it. And it's all misconception, Buddha says. It's lies. They're lies we are decorating on top of reality. And so no wonder we get disappointed. It's like you've so long believed that $50 is 500. So long you've believed it, you even see 500. And you go to spend 500, what do you think the result will be? Bitter disappointment. That's why we suffer from attachment, because what we think we'll get isn't what we get. So we're constantly building up dissatisfaction and frustration and despair. Constantly. And then we forget it and we do it again tomorrow. Every second we're driven by this nightmarish process, you know. Attachment and aversion driven by karma, you know. So we understand these, we've got the nuts and bolts of Buddha's analysis of the universe, and therefore of happiness and suffering, and therefore how to fix it. This is self-compassion. This is the first levels of the Lam Rim. Then on the basis of this, you start to realize, my God, we're in the same boat. Now you start to help others, you know, expand your own mind, and you now help others because you know how to help them. That's what wisdom is. Compassion is not enough. Meaning well is not enough. Got to know how to help. Is there any more questions before we all go home? Yes. Anybody online? No. Go. Talk to me.
Can you use attachment in a positive manner?
I can understand. Perfectly a good question. Very first level, very first level, attachment, Buddha says it's the main cause of suffering, right? So you've got to understand that, not just knowing the words. You have to understand it, unpack it, and unravel it. And Lama Yeshe says, I can tell you about attachment for one whole year. You will never begin to understand it until you go deeply inside and really learn to understand the poison, like a good herbalist. You understand the nature of the poison. Only then are you able to use it, because you understand it. Yeah. So that would mean even at the bodhisattva level, Lama Zopa says, so the very first level of practice, which is the Theravadan level, the Hinayana level, we share the teachings of that path. There's no wriggle room there. It's control your body, control your speech, and control your mind. Calm yourself down and play safe. Now, when you get to the bodhisattva path, having controlled your body, speech, and mind to some degree, and got some renunciation, therefore some joy, therefore some understanding of how attachment works, you can then, you know, so that's what Lama Zopa gives us, the methods. The aim is, first one is to give it up. But most of us won't go to the mountains and won't give up sex, drugs, rock and roll and mortgages and give it up. So he gives us the methods of how to use it, adding compassion into the mix. So that means you've got your cake, attachment drives you to it, but you don't shove it in the mouth. You think of compassion, you think of bodhicitta, you might think of emptiness. Right there, you put atomic bombs under attachment by putting those thoughts in, and that makes now your action virtuous. That's how you can help transform objects of attachment. And it straight away it lessens the attachment, and then it puts imprints of the other virtues in there. So it's naturally going to weaken it. And if you do that all the time, just with your food, already you're transforming. Do you understand? It's very skillful. That includes your sex, your drugs, your rock and roll, and everything else. Yeah. But then we get all guilty. Like a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, I'm a bit lazy and I watch Netflix." I said, "I understand." I said, "You can always transform it." "Oh no, you can't do that. No, it gets all guilty and neurotic, you know." I said, "Well, do you want to watch Netflix with guilt, or you want to watch Netflix with the thought of bodhicitta? Which would you prefer? Make up your mind." But we sort of think, "Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm naughty."
You might watch something and learn something which can help something else. So therefore,
yeah, but even more simple than that. Of course you can. We would and we could. But even more simple, just the concept. "Oh, no, I can't do that," because we think of it's intrinsically naughty, you know, or intrinsically eating food is naughty. "Oh, I can't offer sex. How could I do that, you know?" Well, if you're going to have sex, you might as well. Why do it with a negative? I mean, if you're going to have sex, do it with a positive motivation instead of a negative one. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer, you know. You redeem it what you can. You understand my point? Mm-hmm. Got to be a bit grown up and be. I mean, we should be so happy they're giving us methods to have our cake and eat it too. Do you understand? So skillful. Someone else. Someone else? Yes.
Why are we so addicted to feeling guilty?
Habit.
Just habit.
Only habit. There's no other reason. Why are you good at anything? If you see a
Why do
person,
we like it? It's
it's
almost like
habit.
we like
Habit. Self-pity. Habit.
So-
So ego is disgusting, this repulsive self-pity. Porn. It's obsessed with itself. And we wallow in it and swim in it and jump into it and love it and what don't I mean, it's just because the irony of attachment, the irony of ego is like that. We just have to look at it and have to understand it. We have to see. But it's just habit. I mean, it's sort of very logical. Hang on. If you see a person playing piano well, you're not surprised. Oh, well, I have been practicing for 10 years. What do you expect? Well, why are you good at anger? Why are you good at attachment? Because we practice it. And because it's so self-centered, we wallow. And it's not, we suffer. It's not to be mean about us. We're just addicted to it. It's habit. Addicted. So we support it and defend it. And basically it's driven by fear, because all delusions are rooted in fear. Totally rooted in fear. They often just talk about ignorance being rooted in fear, you know. But all of the delusions, their character is fear and anxiety. That's their character. We have to unpack that and look at that. It's because the things aren't real. Because it's not true. The delusions are liars. It's just habit. Which gives us the courage to know we can change the habit. Yes.
Venerable, do you have a favourite story or memory about Lama Yeshe that you could share with us? Something that made you laugh or bring you
Oh,
joy?
lots of stories, sure.
A story for us about.
Well, I'll tell you one story. I know one story. And I had the good fortune to be Lama Yeshe's attendant for I think a few days in London. I couldn't believe my good fortune. I was so happy, you know. It was about 2 years before he passed away. And it was at a time in England when I was having a big lot of drama. There was some centre of big politics, and I was in the middle of all the politics and the dramas and all this self-pity and misery, and myself being miserable and self-piteous. But, you know, I had this job to help Lama. I couldn't believe it. I was so happy, but I didn't know how to do it because I never knew how to take care of people. I was hopeless. And somehow, because I had this opportunity, Lama just always took the opportunity to point out that I was hopeless and didn't know how to take care of people. So he'd say, "You're so stupid." And I didn't know how to serve a cup of tea. Because when I was a kid in a family of 7 children at home, I never did the dishes. I was so arrogant. I just assumed everybody else would do it. I never learned how to take care of anybody. I had no idea. So I just did what I wanted all my life, you know. So suddenly I had to take care of Lama. And I didn't know how to serve a cup of tea. I was completely just ridiculous. I was so embarrassed. And I mean, just ridiculous. Anyway, one time, what was it? One thing. Anyway, never mind. Lost a few things, but one story at that time, I had this drama with these people. And Harvey and I, my friend Harvey Horrocks was the main attendant, we went out to buy something for Lama, and we walked into a door. We walked into a cafe, and it was a glass door, and I walked quickly, so I didn't see the door, and I walked into the glass. So I got concussion, blood coming. So the taxi, he was a boxer who drove the taxi. He told me how to put my head back and blah, blah. So that night we had to go out for dinner with Lama and a whole bunch of students, and it was kind of a bit intense because all the problems that were happening and there's politics going on. And I was and I got angry with people, and I was completely fraught and neurotic, you know. So that night I took Lama back to his room, and I was all full of self-pity, and he's lying, poor Lama, half dead, you know, from his bad heart and all these neurotic students. He's lying on his bed. And after I took him back to his room, and I was all self-piteous, you know, "I'm so sorry, Lama. Am I getting better, Lama?" He said, "Yes, dear." Anyway, he said, "Come here." I told him about my crash, my nose. He said, "Come here." So I went, "Kneel down." So I knelt. "Close your eyes." So I closed my eyes. And he spat at me. He spat on me. And then he told me, "Oh, that's what we Tibetans do." Because they use their spit and their breath to heal you. These holy beings, their breath and their spit is holy. So they heal like crazy with their spit and their breath. Of course, I would have ducked if I'd seen him spit on me. So I had to have my eyes closed. And and he kind of fixed my concussion, my poor crazy mind, you know. And I felt so proud. I thought, "Oh, Lama spat on me." I was so honored that Lama spat on me, and he healed my poor broken nose, my poor concussed nose. That was all. That was one story, okay? That's enough. I can tell you something Lama Zopa did. This is even more intense. I was always, I don't know, anyway, I'm just a troublemaker, and I was having fights with people. I get sacked from half my jobs in the FPMT, but it's all right, I keep coming back. I am very optimistic and persistent. Anyway, here I am. This time, I worked for Nick Rebush. Anybody know Nick Rebush? He's my old friend from the centuries, and Nick is a very soft aspect, right? And I'm a very busy aspect, noisy, loud, shouting. That's our aspect. So Nick had to be the director of wisdom at some point. Some other person was before, and then I was working for Nick. And it was very difficult for Nick. I mean, anybody who knows Nick and knows me, you can imagine him being my boss. Quite difficult, you know, from my side, never mind his side. because I like doing what I do, and I run around leading what I want to do, doing what I want to do when I want to do it. I don't like having bosses. Never mind. So it was good practice for me and good practice for him. And at some point, it was very difficult for him. He didn't want me to go, and I was very so upset and so hurt and injured and so piteous. And I had to go to Delhi, to India, to have some teachers from His Holiness. And I had a quick meeting with Rinpoche beforehand to say hello. And I had all these unhappy thoughts in my mind about Nick and not fair and poor me and everything. And I didn't even get to sit down, because the second I just went in the room and prostrated, and even before I sat down, Rinpoche started praising Nick like he's a bodhisattva. The whole meeting was about Nick being a bodhisattva. The whole meeting. And I was distraught. I wasn't going to say anything, because I never said anything, and they wouldn't let me say anything anyway. But I thought, I can't even have bad thoughts, you know. I have all this remorse. And I went to the teachings of His Holiness, and I wrote a note asking for a purification practice and gave it to his attendant. This is before Venerable Roger. And 3 months later, an answer came in the attendant's writing, and it said precisely this, no name. It said, you tell her if she wants to purify, visualize Nick above her head, pissing and shitting, and experience great bliss. So that was my special esoteric practice from Lama Zopa, a unique, custom-made practice from Lama Zopa. That's my kind lamas. Well, you just have to think about it. You know it's going to work. You have to do it. You know? It's enough. Anyway, that was all. That'll do. Yes, darling.
Question
Good. What's the question?
online.
Yeah, go on.
Rosemary is asking, why is being attached to what people think of us such a priority?
I know, it's so fascinating. It's okay, let's talk about it. This is the deepest attachment of all, I would say, more than sex, drugs, rock and roll, or anything else. And I think it's the last, I think because attachment, these three poisons, the ego grasping is the root delusion. The very assumption of an intrinsic me is the main one, which underpins everything. And its main voice is this emotional hunger to get what that poor intrinsic I wants. That's it. So it's very linked to the ignorance. They're very linked in their energy, very, very linked. So the obvious gross level of attachment is the objects of the senses. It's the first one. There it is. Things, sound, smell, taste, especially bodies and food and stuff like that. That's the obvious first level. But the more subtle one, another whole level of it is all attached to comfort. Meaning attachment, you see, is this junkie that only can cope with nice things. It only wants nice sounds, nice smell, nice taste, nice feelings, nice environment. Everything has to be nice. And the more strong attachment is, the more neurotic we get and have anger when the things go wrong. We really can see that, So, but the deepest attachment, they don't really talk about this until the Bodhisattva path, and they talk about this strange phrase they use, the eight, what do you call it? 8 worldly dharmas, isn't it? This weird, wacky phrase. It's just attachment at a more primordial level than in the middle scope, where they talk about controlling attachment to the sex, mainly to the sense objects. They keep it very simple. But here it's more primordial. And it's 8 different ways of describing the way this emotional hunger works, and how basically it's a way of describing how it pervades the whole time. So in the earlier stages, when you get to the middle scope, it tells you about attachment. And then aversion, the third of the 3 poisons, is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. It's the panic attack of, oh my God, this should not be happening, which is anger. Or milder frustration, annoyance, irritation, or even more subtle depression and despair. It's a whole discussion, that one. But here, when they talk about the 8 worldly dharmas, it's attachment all the time. So the first pair is this constant hunger to have happy feelings. To have happy feelings, which is called happiness, happy feelings. There's a constant assumption there that I must get happy feelings. And it's a constant hunger to get happy feelings. And there's an assumption that I must get happy feelings. And that's what happiness is, when you get nice things, or happy feelings. And then a second an unhappy feeling arises, like you stub your toe, for example. Normally in the first way it talks, you've got attachment to be pain-free, and then as soon as the stubbing of the toe comes, it turns into anger. How dare the pain come? But here it talks about the first level of attachment is the assumption I should have a happy feeling. And the millisecond the pain comes, the attachment shifts to being attached to being free of pain. Analyze that. As soon as you get your pain, all you're thinking about is which pill will work, which method will work. I must go to massage. I must do this. It's this driven by the attachment to be free of the pain. Are you seeing what I'm saying? There's aversion to it, but the attachment is overriding, constantly wish how to be free of the pain, which is, it's intense. So it never stops being attachment. The next pair, it's not about attachment to getting things. I mean, they talk about that one a lot. And then freedom, then attachment to being free of not getting things. But the next two lots are really powerful. The next pair, and these two lots can sound similar, is attachment, constant attachment to hearing nice words with my name in them, which is called praise. And then we know the millisecond you hear one tiny word of criticism, the pain is unbearable, isn't it? It's like, and this is not even the fourth pair, which is attachment to being liked. This is even grosser. Attachment to being praised, hearing the words. And the second you hear the unpleasant words, the attachment shifts to now to try to fix it, to being hearing, to being attached to being free of hearing unpleasant words with your name in them. Can you see what I'm saying? The fourth one, these are the closest to, I think this is the closest to ego grasping. It's the last attachment to go, the most pervasive, the most pervasive, which is attachment to how we are seen by others, attachment to be liked, attachment to be seen as a good girl, attachment to being approved of, attachment to being even validated as even existing, if you think about it. They say the yogis in the mountains have given up all the regular attachments, even things, pleasure, but they're still thinking about what the people down in the village are thinking about them. So if you look at this one, it's in our mind all the time. When we're really overwhelmed by this one, we're constantly judging since we're born. Our behavior and the words we say are in reference to the response we get. So we make sure we say the right thing, do the things and say the words that will get the right response from the person in front. Then we feel I must have done the right thing. And that's why when we're really triggered by this one, we don't have any authenticity. We are, everything we are thinking and doing, everything we say and do is governed by making sure we get the right response. So when we really, are we hearing this one? And then in our mind, we're continually having conversations with people because you see, this attachment means we don't have any value for our own thoughts, even not to mention ourselves, but our own very thoughts. That's why we have loneliness. You think about loneliness. You have all these thoughts, all these wishes, and you have as we say, no one to share them with. Now, having friends is wonderful, but if it's driven by attachment to being seen and heard, which is when it is suffering, it's no satisfaction in it. It's just misery. Because, in other words, why is it? You have to ask, why do I need someone to like me? This is really what it is. Why do I need to be liked? Because I assume I'm nobody unless someone likes me. We assume I'm not valid until someone else smiles at me. That's how serious it is. We are nothing until someone smiles. So if you're lonely, you've got no one else to smile. You've got no one to smile at you and no one who can then, when you pour out your stories, all you want to do is, why we pour out our feelings is because we don't value ourselves. We don't value our own thoughts. So we have to have someone else hear me and say, wow, Robina, that's interesting. In other words, we have to look in the mirror to know we exist. Are we communicating? This is every human being. If you've got ego grasping, you're this schizophrenic person who's got a separate sense of I that is separate from others. And as even Lama Yeshe says in his Mahamudra, quoting Chandrakirti, the very sense of a separate I implies others. And the attachment is this sense of actually, the more attachment is there, the more we are literally nobody. So we are hungry for other people to just even smile. Even as a baby, it's there, driving everything. You just do a funny thing and mummy smiles at you. Already that's being validated. Oh, I must be a nice existing baby. Next day you do it and she punches you because she's angry. No wonder we get confused. And this is in our mind all the time. I'm always talking to people in our head. So you're driving the car, you see some nice funny old thing and you're telling somebody. And like you've got a hubby at home, you can't wait to get home to tell him, blur, blur. You share it, which is nice. To share is good. But we don't think it's real until you share it. We don't think our thoughts are real until someone else hears them. That's schizophrenic. That's normal human behavior. And even in our culture, we call that you have to be socialized. So you become a real person only in reference to others. That's very demented. In Buddhism, you become your own person by going inside. So to have no thought I mean, it's, to no thought of what other people think in its neurotic sense is like so advanced. Only the bodhisattvas, I tell you. So advanced. Even if we're together people with a lot of self-confidence and content in our lives and don't get lonely, we've still got it so deep in our bones, what other people think. Constantly. I mean, why do you think you get upset if someone toots the horn in a bloody freeway? Can't even see their face, but you get upset. Someone disapproved of me. It's automatic, you know. So the praise one is even more gross with its speech. This one is just what people think of us. Attachment to reputation, they call it. Sounds so hilarious. It's attachment to being liked. So don't mix it with the virtue of having kindness and love and friends. That's virtue. That's fantastic. But this is anything that. So if we have love and compassion in a relationship, that's the only reason we're happy. The attachment poisons it. You know, attachment to them doing what I want, attachment to their praise. And when this attachment is really strong, then you are a bottomless pit of misery. No matter how much your husband tells you he loves you, you can suck his blood daily, you'll still be miserable. Because attachment to this one. So we have to be, what is that lovely phrase, our mothers? We've got to become our own person, approve of ourselves. Know our own mind, satisfy ourselves, become our own rich, delicious, content, fulfilled person. Then you're ready for the compassion meal. Then people won't leave you alone. They'll love you. You have to keep them off because you're satisfied and happy. You know, it's the last one to go until you realize emptiness. I'm quite sure. It's there all the time, all the time. Everything we even think is in reference to what people think. So it's very hard to ever know what you think. It's very hard to know what is valid, because and that's why it's so scary. I mean, the mob mentality is this one. You're too scared to even put your hand up, to dare to go against the mob, because you'll be disapproved of. So we just all sneak behind, following each other, you know, because we're scared of what people think. We think, oh, I can't say that, I might upset him. No, you can't say that because you're terrified he won't like you. And this is where it's hard to see this one. If you're a peaceful person, if you're a kind of person who doesn't get angry easily, you might look such a nice person. You never raise your voice, but you might be driven by this craving to be seen as a good boy. You know, you think you're so holy because you can't see the difference between being kind and patient and having the courage and not having, and because it's easy for you to be quiet. You think you're being patient, you're being passive, and you never dare upset the apple cart. That's because of attachment to being seen as a naughty boy. It's very hard to see it if you're a quiet person. You understand what I'm saying, people? Mm-hmm. It's the deepest attachment, the most subtle, the most primordial, the last to go, I think, before you realize emptiness. You know? So does that answer the question, I hope? Does that answer the question? Good. Any more questions? Go on, talk to me.
Just on what you said.
Yeah.
Am I kidding myself in that I try and be the best at everything I do? So
No, I don't know if you're kidding yourself, but you have to know we're driven by delusions and we have virtues. And what practice is distinguishing between them. And as you progress in your practice, you get to be ever more subtle and ever more precise in separating the delusions from the virtues. That's it. So you have to know your own mind. That's it. That's the job of being a Buddhist, all the way from here to Buddhahood, knowing what to abandon and what to practice. And that's incredibly subtle because we have 1,000 thoughts a second.
Sorry, I didn't quite. Is it all right to say I didn't quite understand? So
you didn't hear what I said?
No, I didn't quite understand what you.
I'm trying to hear. Tell me what you think you heard me say. What do you think I say? What do you think I said?
So that you understand the wisdom to know when.
No, I didn't say that.
All right.
We've got delusions,
Yeah.
attachment, anger, jealousy, and we have virtues.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at the word Buddha, remember, Bud is to get rid of the rubbish, and then Da is to get the goodness.
Yeah.
So your job is to distinguish between them. Would you agree?
Yes.
In your own mind?
Yes.
Well, then there's the answer. So the more you know your own mind, I can't tell you if you're fooling yourself.
No.
So you listen.
Yes,
So you have you've got some if you say, I want to do things best, that sounds like a virtue. But because you're ordinary, it's going to naturally be implied pushed by attachment. Of course it will. It's natural. Right. So you've got to see that aspect. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and chuck everything out, but learn to distinguish and identify that virtuous thought and identify the attachment that's poisoning it. I mean, do you see my point?
Yes, I
It's
do.
natural. You can have, you love somebody, which is may you be happy. But because you're an ordinary person now, you're going to have attachment mixed completely with it,
Yep.
which means I want you to be happy because I want you to be happy, and you give me and I'll give you, and we'll scratch each other's back. That's attachment. You can't not have it until you're advanced. So you know that. That means you have to see your mind every time and do your best to identify. Don't chuck the love out,
Yeah.
but try to identify the attachment and lessen that and grow the love. That's what the job of being a Buddhist is. Every single second,
Now
as
it's-
much as you can.
Now it's clear.
Now you understand.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. What else, people?
Mhm.
Yes, someone else. Yeah, where? Yes, Martin.
So we're attached to happy feelings. But then ironically, wouldn't even the bliss of Buddhahood
Yes,
be happy feelings?
that's right. Exactly.
So
Okay.
that's an irony there.
I know. No, it's not. No. It's a very good point. Is it your question? Is it an irony?
Or sure.
No.
Something to be sorted out.
It's something to be sorted out. Okay. This is what I find so helpful. Forget Buddhahood, forget compassion, forget bodhicitta, just forget emptiness. Just let's look at getting shamatha. Okay. This is why Lama Yeshe is so kind in how he talks to modern people. He tries to get us to be enthused and encouraged by our potential. So, when they always talk about the 9 stages of single point of concentration, all the lamas will give you all the technical aspects of it, this, that, and then this, a bit of this, and a bit of that, and mindfulness, and then that, and then this. And it's just technical. But Lama, he gives you, he quotes the experiences that you would have. And when you read, even just getting single point of concentration, this incredible technique these genius Indians invented before the Buddha, which he got to talk with him, which enables you to go to these subtle levels of mind beyond the gross conceptuality and beyond the sensory. So we can't even conceptualize that level of mind because we don't posit it in modern neuroscience. But this is these genius Indians have discovered this, and this is the Buddha's one. We've got these subtler levels of mind. This is well before you realize empties or anything. So just getting not even the 9 stages, but some level of concentration, which means your crazy thoughts have subdued to some degree. Your senses even have become more subtle. So then you've accessed your more subtle level of mental consciousness. And because the thoughts to some degree have subdued, and because the sensory has subdued, you are tasting, you are living, you're existing at a subtle level of your own mind, and it is naturally, as Lama would say, blissful, ecstatic, rapturous. He uses words like that. He learned all these amazing words. That is naturally the state of mind to the degree it's unencumbered by both the senses and the conceptuality. But even in ordinary daily life, anybody who still has senses but doesn't have much anger or attachment, their mind is naturally more joyful. So the more virtue you have, even just forget concentration, the more virtuous you are, the more happy feelings you'll have. So then you get to subtle concentration, and you've gone beyond your senses as well. As Lama says, first the bliss is sensory still, but as you get more subtle, it is rapturous ecstasy, but it is totally peaceful. And this is it's totally peaceful. This is the natural potential of every single mind. In other words, he's saying, this is the very first level of practice. The Buddha's saying, we think that happy feelings, I want to go into what happy feelings are in a minute. We'll go over our time. If you have to go, please go. But we think, he's basically saying the whole first 2 scopes are all about this. We think he's saying that happy feelings are what we get when we get objects of attachment. And the fact is we do. When you put that cake in your mouth, okay, it definitely triggers happy feelings. It definitely does. So that's the only method we know how. But he would say it's contaminated because it's driven by attachment. And then what happens is when you're going to have, not too much detail, no time, but the happy feeling will arise. But attachment's sitting right next to the happy feeling. And it's been, first of all, it's been anticipating that happy feeling. Attachment's there, greedily anticipating the happy feeling. Finally, the cake hits the mouth, and then happy feeling arises. But attachment, which is never satisfied, says, sorry, Robina, not enough, take another piece. I'm not happy yet. Because attachment is a bottomless pit. So attachment destroys the whole damn thing. And then so you put another piece of cake in, hoping for a better feeling. But we all know that the feelings are now going down. And after 4 pieces, it's now become disgusting feelings. You want to vomit. So we miss the opportunity. We miss, because we're not satisfied with that level of happy feeling. So Buddha's saying, you think happy feelings is what you get when you get what attachment wants, which is what we have with a human body. We can't help it. But he says, no, he has found a method to get happy feelings all the time that are 1 billion times better, and you get those, first you get concentration, but you really get them when you've given up attachment. So we think happiness is what you get when you get attachment once. No, it's what you get when you give up attachment. So in other words, stop being a junkie. We're all junkies right now. And we can see a junkie. You see an alcoholic, you can say, you call that pleasure, but that's because it's so junky. That's the pleasure we have now based on attachment, like junkies. So giving up attachment is the first level of practice. And the result, and it's so naked, but he doesn't say it so nakedly, we can't hear it because we hear it as punitive. The result is unbelievable joy and bliss and happiness. It's so simple. But the tragedy is too, okay, so what is happy feelings? This is now what's interesting. When you study the Buddhist view of the mind, you study there are deluded states of mind like we just discussed, and there are virtuous ones. But there's a third category, and I like to call these the mechanical parts of our mind. You listen to this. They're the type of the parts that make you function properly. Intention, not motivation. I will is a volition. That's neither negative nor positive, the first two categories. Attention, you pay attention. Concentration, mindfulness is a state of mind that enables you to stay on track with what you're doing, whether you're meditating or murdering somebody. So these are neither negative nor positive, but which are totally necessary to function. So as Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. So these are mechanical parts of your mind, if you like, that enable you to do anything that you do properly, good or bad. So, oddly enough, because we're just so confused about it, in that category, there's another state of mind called feeling. And there's only 3 kinds. I never got to speak to you. See you, darling. Bye, sweetheart. Yeah, bye. There's only 3 kinds of feeling. Pleasant feelings or happy feelings, unpleasant feelings or unhappy or suffering. And the third one's called neutral. Well, forget the neutral, okay? In our life, we are only paying attention desperately to get happy feelings. And at the moment, the junkie runs the show. But happy feelings are what Buddha is simply telling us we have the potential to accomplish. But we're so caught up with it in a punitive way because it's driven by attachment, we hear it as an irony. But it's simply coming to terms with our natural state. By the time, even before you realize emptiness, just giving up attachment means you are happy. It's just a natural thing. But happiness is not a virtue or a non-virtue. But we're so linked to punitive and sin and play, and it's naughty. We think of it's naughty, but it's just the nature of our mind. It's just the nature of our mind when it's unencumbered by garbage. And so and as Lama says, you can't even conceive just getting single point of concentration. The joy, he uses those words, rapture, ecstasy, is incomprehensible to us. You know, this is not mystical. This is just our natural state of mind. And the way we have happiness now, because it's based on attachment and the senses, the very gross body, it's like the happiness of a junkie, basically. And it's the best we can get. And it doesn't last because we're never satisfied. It doesn't last because we're never satisfied. Do you understand? This is why he calls it the suffering of change. Are we communicating here? That's the point. Are you understand? But you can really see on the Bodhisattva path, Tsongkhapa, he puts concentration and emptiness at the end of the 6 perfections in the Mahayana path. But concentration is not even a Buddhist teaching, it's Hindu. And then emptiness is a Hinayana component, is a Theravadan teaching. To achieve your own nirvana, you need to realize emptiness. So it's not a Mahayana teaching in its nature. But Tsongkhapa puts it at the end. It's because if you started getting concentration, the bliss will be so inconceivable, you're going to forget all about compassion. You're not going to worry about sentient beings. You're going to get the hell out of samsara, you know. So you so skillfully, you get renunciation in the first 2 scopes, but then you put emptiness in the thing after you've got bodhicitta. Because once you've got bodhicitta, you're a little bit more less able, you're a little bit more capable of not giving up on sentient beings. But if you just get bliss, you're not interested in having sentient beings. You don't care, you know. I remember one Lama, Geshe Tashi in Queensland, actually, years ago, he said because you know how the Theravadan teachings, there's different views even in the Mahayanas, say that when you've achieved nirvana, your mind completely disappears. You're gone like a puff of smoke disappeared. But the Mahayanas say you've just gone to this subtle state of bliss for a few eons. Subtle state of bliss. And Geshe Tashi said one day, I've heard this from other lamas, the bodhisattvas come up, or Buddha comes along, taps you on the shoulder, says, okay, honey, about time to come back on the Mahayana path, get out of this bliss, and you can benefit others, become a bodhisattva and a Buddha. They say giving up that bliss is the worst pain in the universe. It's very interesting, isn't it, these ways of talking. But the natural state of a mind that's not deluded is bliss. This is so fascinating. Whereas we think of it as a gift. That's why if you're a Christian, you've got to be married to have that level of bliss. It's got to be a sacrament. You can't just have it on your own. Got to be given permission to have the pleasure. You understand? Very interesting, isn't it? So, and we hear it as so punitive, like you're naughty if you have pleasure. It's because of attachment and guilt. I'm a naughty person. You know, it's hilarious. Are we communicating?
Mhm.
Maybe it's time to finish. But I remember even Venerable Rene, or even, he's a wonderful monk, I'm sure he's a bodhisattva, meditating the last 50 years, you know. I interviewed him in 95 about his concentration meditation, his first main one. We did it at Ursel Ling in Spain, this lovely center of lamas where Lama Ursel was born, up in the mountains, the Sierra Nevada, near Granada. And I interviewed him in 95 about his first retreat, like in a year and a half or something, or 2 years, I can't remember. But he says, well, he got to about the 5th of the 9 stages instead of concentration. And I remember him saying something like, there was no question that the pleasure his mind, the joy, pleasure, rapture, ecstasy, they're all synonyms, okay? That's just natural. A mind naturally experiences bliss when it's not experiencing misery and unhappiness and delusions. That's the thing. And the sensory, it's very gross. So he said the pleasure was so superior to any pleasure experienced through the senses. Because Lama says, when he's constant in the Mahamudra book, he talks about how the pleasure is first level of this joy is sensory, but as you get more subtle in your concentration, it's purely mental pleasure. And that's why in our lives, just a few more minutes, we really got to learn to distinguish between sensory and mental. This is a major way of dividing how our mind works. But because we're so dominated by our bodies, we don't even know the difference. So our view of what happiness is a sensory feeling. Pleasure, or the massage, or the sex, or anything physical, touching, you know, or the eye objects, especially the physical one and the tongue one. They're very, very strong, aren't they? Taste, but most one is the tactile. So anytime or even just free of unpleasant feelings, we think that's called happy, but it's driven by our feelings of the body, which is sensory. This is the grossest level of our being, the grossest level. Then we have mental consciousness, all our thoughts and feelings and emotions. So the point about Buddha saying you can't get pleasure, the pleasure doesn't last, is a sensory pleasure. Because if you keep stroking, I mean, you know you have an hour-and-a-half massage. It's very obvious. But you used to go for 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours, 9.5 hours. I'm sorry, you'd find it completely loathsome. I remember reading about a woman who had orgasms all the time. So she lived in hell. Do you see what I'm saying? Because pleasure, we have to have it get to a peak and then stop. So if you fill your stomach, you go to sleep, you eat the cake again. You have the sex, you go to sleep, you get hungry again. It's like really deluded, you know? And it's gross. So the sensory, by definition, senses are so gross, you can't ever get satisfaction from sensory pleasure because it turns into unpleasure. It's just natural. The more cake you eat, the more you want to vomit. The more you touch or had sex or whatever it is, or listen to music day and night, you die of exhaustion and you'd be revolted. So you can't get happiness that lasts. It's a technical point, not a moralistic one, through the senses. But mental pleasure, which comes from virtue, that can be grown. It's a very simple point. It's not moralistic. You see what I'm saying, people?
Mm.
So mental pleasure is hard to get. We can't even tell, you know. And it's hard to even too, when you say, it's hard to even distinguish between mental happiness and then love. If you love a person, it does trigger some pleasant feelings. That's mental pleasure. That's mental. You have the love, your heart reaches out. That's love, and it mixes with the mental pleasure. But the long-term result of virtue now will bring, in the future, happy feelings, happy experiences, people being kind to you, happy environment. So the pleasure will not just be in the mind, but even the things you meet and the environment you meet and the people you meet will do nice things to you. So that's literally the fruit of being virtuous, long term. That's mental pleasure. And then you have a sensory pleasure as well, and everything's happy. So even just happy feelings, happy environment, happy food, everything, all the external world, which is not itself happiness, because happiness is a mental thing. You know, when we think about happiness now, we think about the object. Tell me about your happiness, Robina. I'll tell you about the cake. The cake's not happiness. This has triggered the pleasure, that's all. So we think of the external, but it's internal. So to distinguish between the sensory and the mental is very powerful. And what Buddha's talking about is the mental pleasure, mental joy. And that's what you get finally when you get concentration. Senses stop. It's just pure mental. And they call it ecstasy. and it's peaceful. It's not, because it's not driven by attachment, so it's not like panic stricken and berserk. As Lama says, even attachment just to drink is like berserk because it's sensory. But mental pleasure is not berserk. It's interesting, isn't it? But one final point about Venerable Rene. I interviewed him in Spain at the centre, which is beautiful. His Holiness blessed it in 1982. It was so beautiful. Up in the mountains, reminded him of Tibet, he said. He called it place of clear light, Ling. So I interviewed Rene there, Venerable Rene. And and then I interviewed him at Kopan, not there, about his retreat there, but at Kopan. Now, anybody who's been to Kopan knows it's busy. Even though this is 30 years ago, it was still busy. And he said his mind, he said in Ling, which is very pure, he said he knew he never got past the 5th of the 9 stages. Even the first 6 months, he got to the 5th, but couldn't get past it. He said because the environment was not subtle enough. And they all say the main quality of a place to meditate is where holy beings have meditated, where the holy beings, the Buddhas are. So at Kopan, which is crazy busy with the dogs and the singing and everything, he said his mind got more subtle more easily because blessed by holy beings. So it's an interesting point. That's enough, I think, isn't it? Food for thought. So remember our potential, people, and just remember our potential for pleasure, joy, but no, it comes from virtue. That's all. It's not sensory. Nothing wrong with sensory pleasure, but it doesn't last. But mental pleasure does, and that's the point the Buddha's making. Do you understand the people? That can be grown, as Lama says, and as Rinpoche says, and that comes from virtue. That's it. Practice. So practical. Don't think of it as religion, please. It's practical psychology. So if there's anything useful, please take it as advice. Try to do our best and never forget, as Lama puts it all the time, our potential, our incredible potential for joy and empathy. That's it. Be happy and know this. We are the beneficiaries. We are the beneficiaries. We totally deserve. We must do it for our sake and the sake of others. John Chub, Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Kie Panam, Kie Guchi, Kie Panyampa, Me Panyang, Gong Ne, Gondu, Herba Shog. And may Lamas of Rinpoche come back. I saw Venerable Roger 2 days ago in Kopan. I heard different things. There's some story going around that Rinpoche maybe has been reborn or he's already been conceived even before he died. That's a possibility. And the other story is Kandala told somebody about a year ago that she had a dream in which Rinpoche appeared and smiled and took her hand and drew her towards him and said he was very happy where he was and she saw mountains. So maybe we can deduce he's a Nepali or Tibetan boy from the mountains. So we get down to that, maybe that. So we'll see. And then Venerable Roger, if you've been there to Kopan, you know the building where Rinpoche has this room. It's all concrete. And Venerable Roger doesn't want to have the incarnation to be there. So there's a hill at Kopan. It's famous, the hill. And it's right outside his window on the 4th floor. And he wants to build a little house with grass and a garden for the new incarnation. That's his thought. That was the latest news, okay? So we hope he comes back soon. And remember, if we are students of Rinpoche's, we are the cause of him coming back. He can go anywhere he likes. But if we all need him, then he'll come back. So we have to know it's dependent arising, okay? But may he come back soon. May he come back soon. May we also have His Holiness stay long. He told all the people in Dharamsala last year at this long life puja that Rinpoche had organized before he died, and they didn't translate it properly there, but it's very moving. He said he had a dream in which Palin Lhamo, this wrathful female protector Buddha, appeared to him. She sits on a mule in a sea of blood, and he said, she plucked me out from behind, out of the sea of blood, and said, you will live for another 20 or 30 years. So we hope he does that as well. Okay. Thank you.
Venerable Robina, thank you
Yes.
so much
Okay.
for bringing it all back down to earth and very, very practical. Thank you.
Okay.
And please live a long, 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 long time.
Oh, I'd say hang on to His Holiness' coattails. I'll do that.
And please come back and teach us again and keep teaching us until we get it.
I know, well,
Please.
well, he got it second time around. He got it the second time around. Okay.
Thank you.
darling.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody on Zoom. Happy to see you all, but you've shrunk a bit.